All right, y'all, strap in, because this one's going to be intense. Last time we talked in lecture 2.3, we discussed project management life cycles. A bit of an abstract topic where we got into the different phases of a project and then talked about the various use cases and character traits of different life cycles like agile, sequential, and hybrid. The goal of that lecture was to give you an idea or a feel for identifying if your projects, past, present, or future, are using the correct approach. Now, that does not mean to go and immediately change everything you're currently working on, but hopefully it gives you a better starting point for future projects. Now, in this lecture, the topic is going to be a bit less abstract. We all know what team collaboration is, hopefully, but are we and our teammates doing it correctly? That's an important question. And rather than losing our tempers or being passive aggressive or maybe just straight up aggressive, I think we've all had that coworker, if you know what I mean. What do we do to correct the course when someone potentially falls out of line or misses a deadline or creates roadblocks, etc.? And how do we keep ourselves in check within that process too? Well, we're going to cover all of that and then some in this lecture. So we're going to talk about collaboration in project management, setting up a project team workspaces, project kickoff meetings, how to manage a team effectively, and lastly, how to create a collaborative work environment. By the end of Module 2.4, you should be able to explain the role of collaboration, identify strategies for building effective project teams, describe practices for fostering collaboration, organize productive meetings and brainstorming, and apply conflict resolution strategies. As you can see, we've got a lot of ground to cover here, so I won't waste any time. Let's jump right in. I want everyone to think about your dream project for a moment. You've analyzed the various methodologies, chosen the frameworks most suited to your project, hired your team, approved your objectives, and found a project management tool that does everything you ever dreamt of. But what good is any of that if the team you work with doesn't work well together? Throughout the entire project life cycle, working together with each team member will ensure you all function as a cohesive unit. But just because you've selected the right people to accomplish that work doesn't mean they'll always collaborate in the best way. Different work habits, communication styles, and short-term and long-term goals can throw off your entire team and the project off track. So it's important that we clarify the behaviors the team should practice and work with the team as a whole on establishing a set of key values from the beginning to help start everyone off on the right foot. Before we get into building a collaborative team environment, though, let's first identify why collaboration is so important. Without collaboration, your project, perhaps even your company or organization or business, wherever you're working at, will stagnate and will usually end up failing. It's that simple. That's how it works. It takes a team's combined ideas and work to pull off a very complex project, to innovate, and to create products that beat the competition. Collaboration is important for two main reasons. Number one, or the first, being that internal collaboration increases productivity. When internal teams use remote collaboration tools and work processes that make communication and collaboration more efficient, they can meet goals faster and produce better quality work. Internal productivity increases with smoother collaboration. A study of 1,100 companies carried out by the Institute of Corporate Productivity, or I4CP, and Professor Rob Cross of Babson College in Massachusetts found that companies that promoted collaborative working were 5 times more likely to be high performing. And then the second reason collaboration is so important is that collaborating with external stakeholders increases innovation. So internal collaboration increases productivity, and external collaboration increases innovation. We've all seen the billboards around here, so you should know that we mean business at ASU about innovation. We've held the title for #1 in innovation for 10 years now. Over 10 years. That means you should probably expect us professors to be strongly encouraging you to go out and collaborate with peers who are not in your major. That is a perfect example of external collaboration. When you seek feedback from your customers, partners, and vendors, aka your external collaborators, and are able to use their feedback to improve your product or service, the customer's actual wants and needs will align with your product's features. They'll align better with your product's features at least. Today's companies who try to do everything in-house are, by nature, limited on their innovation. It is impossible to be good at everything all the time. It's a good lesson for all of you who feel like you have crippling imposter syndrome. Take notes. It never fails. Every semester, I have a handful of students who come up to me with a 90% as their overall score in the class, and they want to know if they can do anything to improve their grade. Guys, 90% is great. Chill out. Trust me, I'm a Virgo. I completely understand the perfection mentality, but holy cow, be kind to yourselves. Relax. But more importantly, the best way to increase that grade is start seeking feedback. Everyone, every team needs outside ideas and feedback to grow. Don't just seek feedback from me, seek feedback from your peers too. The same goes for your projects and the teams that you will go on to work with. When teams work together, they can achieve really amazing things. Okay, motivational speech complete, moving on. Now that we're on the same page about the value of collaboration, let's take a step back and discuss what makes a project team. Merely assigning tasks is not the same as building a strong and naturally collaborative team. The Project Management Institute describes a project team as a group of people who are all working towards a common goal by bringing valuable and unique skills to the table. Identifying your project team members, defining your team's identity, and standardizing its operating practices are all critical to a successful product. So what are some of the things that you ought to consider if you're ever given the opportunity to assemble a project team? Now, understandably, some of you may never become project managers. So the important thing to look at here may not be to view these points as elements by which to build your team, but elements you should consider about yourself when you're looking to join a team, as in getting a job in the industry, such as design, that relies on project managers to assemble people like yourself to work on their projects. Take a look at these a bit deeper. The needs of the project. Understanding the scope of the project first allows project managers to strategically choose who needs to be on the team. Choosing team members who can offer a diverse set of skills is crucial for project managers. If a team lacks a certain skill set, a task may not be completed correctly or at all sometimes. Too many people with the same skills can oftentimes cause confusion or even arguments over who owns any specific task. When thinking about capacity, even if you find the perfect person for a part of your project, if they are overloaded with work, they can become a roadblock. So it's important to project managers that team members have availability in their upcoming project schedules. And then different people have different work styles and personalities. It's important to understand how these differences might affect your team dynamic and embrace them once the project is started. In other words, don't go into a project trying to make sweeping changes. It's important that whenever you join a new project or a new team, before you go off on some crusade to make big, sweeping, heavy-hitting changes to the way that the team operates or functions or organizes itself, that you seek first to understand. Understand why it is the way it currently is. Understand what team members like and don't like about the current method. Understand what customers and users like and don't like about the current method. Understand the way that the project flows. The time to make change, generally speaking, is not in the middle of the project. Instead, it's usually at the end, or sometimes right at the beginning. Frankly, this is a lesson I think is the most difficult for students to learn. It was really hard for me to learn, as a matter of fact. As designers, visual communicators, creative professionals, and problem solvers, most of us are inherent systems thinkers. And we're fairly adept at seeing through inefficiencies, and sometimes those inefficiencies can be frustrating to us. Typically, we can see an easier, more efficient, or potentially cost-saving solution well before other members of the business, and that is an amazing quality. However, it can also be our Achilles heel. Proposing a change without first understanding why something exists the way it is can spell death for really amazing designers. For example, I see it every semester. Someone comes up to me and tells me, look, professor, I redesigned this website, or I redesigned this logo, etc. Yet somehow it looks and functions worse than the original. Be careful here. That's not to say don't change anything ever, but it is to say find the correct time to propose change. So let's pause for a moment and ask this question. What happens when a team member's time is not 100% dedicated to a team? While this condition is not ideal, fortunately it sometimes cannot be avoided. Now, if you're taking this class online and you're in a safe environment to do so, I realize some of you watch these lectures while you're driving, so if that's the case, maybe come back to this later. But before you continue with the lecture, I would like for everyone to pause here and take some time to respond to this question within today's lab assignment, which is lab 1.4. Today's lab is quite simple. It's really just a discussion prompt. Your response doesn't need to be anything long or exhaustive, just a simple list of what you think. So pause here. I'll see you in a bit where we can break this down a little bit further. All right, if you paused the video, welcome back. If not, be sure to submit that comment. It does contribute to your grade, so definitely go back and do that. Additionally, you all will want to be sure to take some time to go back into that lab before the deadline and respond to at least 2 of your peers' comments with arguments either in support or against your peer's point of view with hopefully some cited evidence for your arguments. All right, jumping back in. The key problem with having someone invest only a capacity of 25% or 50% on the team is that they will multitask or task switch. Multitasking reduces the throughput of the team's work and impacts the team's ability to predict delivery consistently. Multitasking slows the progress of the entire team because team members waste time doing what's called context switching and or waiting for each other to finish work before the other can get started. When people are 100% dedicated to the team has the fastest possible throughput. People experience productivity losses somewhere between 20 and 40% when task switching. The loss increases exponentially with the number of tasks. When a person multitasks between two projects, that person is not 50% on each project. Instead, due to the cost of task switching, the person is somewhere between 20 and 40% on each project. People are more likely to make mistakes when they multitask. Task switching consumes working memory, and people are less likely to remember their context when they multitask. When everyone on the team is 100% allocated to one project, they can continuously collaborate as a team, making everyone's work more effective. All right. Teams also need space in which they can work together to understand their existence or state as a team and really to collaborate effectively. Some teams all work in one room together. Some teams have team workspace for their stand-ups and charts, then they work in their own cubicles or offices to do their distributed work. Then some other teams work entirely remote, allowing for their stand-ups to happen virtually and their charts to be hosted online. In 1933, Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Great Workroom at the Johnson Wax Administration Building in Racine, Wisconsin, as an attempt to create an improved open office environment. It spanned a half acre and could house 200 employees in a division-free environment, bathed in diffused natural light. And this is ultimately what became the cornerstone for the very large open campuses that we see today at Google and Apple and Amazon. But while companies are moving toward open, collaborative work environments, organizations also need to create quiet workspaces for workers who need uninterrupted time to think and work. Therefore, companies are designing their offices to balance common and social areas with quiet areas or private spaces where individuals can work without being interrupted, sometimes called caves and common. Other companies are adapting hybrid work schedules to achieve this very same result by allowing workers to work from home some days of the week and then in office other days. When teams have geographically distributed members, the team can then decide how much of their workplace is virtual and how much is physical. Technology, such as document sharing and video conferencing and other virtual collaboration tools, really have helped people collaborate remotely, especially since COVID-19. Geographically distributed teams need virtual workspaces. In addition, project managers might consider getting the team together in person at somewhat regular intervals so that the team can then build trust and learn how to work together. But here's the main thing when it comes to building teams and effective workspaces. Effective teams are formed by bringing people with different skills and functions together. So for all of you who, for the most part, are all looking to get employed into one of these teams, it becomes really important that you identify what your unique skill is. A great place to start would be by asking yourself and answering, Are you a generalist or are you a specialist? In other words, can you do a lot of things relatively effectively, or are you really good at one specific thing? Based on your answer, don't work towards changing that. Lean into it. I hear it from a lot of students when they go to do their senior projects or as they are working on adding projects to their portfolios. What should I do? Well, in my opinion, those are not the times to be adding new tools to your tool belt. It is the time to sort of double down on what you do know and spend those weeks working toward making something that looks and works really good within that skill or function. Your project team can vary depending on the project scope and skills that are needed, but if you ask me, the elements of a successful project team are more or less consistent across the board. Every team needs a leader who can bring out the best in their teammates. Understanding each of your team members' individual strengths and knowing how to bring them out is vital to the success of the team as a whole. When the roadmap and goals are clear, it is much easier for a team to see where they're going and how their contribution matters down the road. So leaders have to encourage their teams to rally around the project with a clear vision. I'm sure we've all had a manager who did not provide that clear vision to us across the course of the project. It was maybe difficult to see the end goal of where our work would ultimately end up or how it would ultimately be used. Sometimes this is actually a strategy. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is called compartmentalization. Effectively, it is a management strategy where teams are mentally and sometimes physically separated according to different aspects of a project to maintain focus and avoid distractions from one area or compartment to spill into another. This is generally used to handle much more complex situations that may have dissenting opinions around the best approach or to provide knowledge gates so that only specific people have access to the more critical decision-making data. Generally, this approach tends to slow down decision-making because the project and sometimes the individual tasks have to sort of be run up the chain of command in order to get resolved. Sometimes teams view SOPs or standard operating procedures as a slog or just busy work. But outlining processes are critical when conflicts arise or a task needs to be assigned. Teams have to know how to take action, and creating standardized processes and workflows, along with having clear roles assigned, really helps to eliminate confusion, and they really empower team members to get past roadblocks on their own. These SOPs can come in the form of step-by-step walkthroughs, hierarchical SOPs where certain tasks have to be applied to specific segments within a workflow. They can come in the form of flowcharts, which provides situational actions based upon actions that were taken previously. And lastly, there's process documentation and guidelines, which is exactly what it sounds like. Think brand guidelines, component libraries, spec sheets, things like that. All of these are examples of SOPs. And then time and time again, studies have shown that diversity improves performance. A strong project team will include a variety of skill sets and experience and a diversity of race, gender, and cultural backgrounds. Many of you will come to me with your resumes, and it'll have the one internship that you've had in a design-relevant job, and you'll ask me to provide feedback on your resume, which I'm always happy to do. But the problem here is that a resume that only shows your design experience is not helping you. For most of us, Our first jobs are not in the field we're studying. Oftentimes we have retail, food service, administrative jobs before we enter our field of study. Include those on your resume. Those show a project manager that you are capable of math, communication, sales, and many other tasks that are super important in the industry. It shows that you have a diverse skill set beyond just your diverse identity. The graphics and visual media industries require us to be subject matter experts in the projects we take on. So that means we ultimately become well-versed in a wide variety of topics. Some of those you may have already learned in some of your previous roles that perhaps you're not listing on your resumes. The same concept applies to your portfolios too. On your about pages, I often see, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a UX designer, and I like solving problems that help make users' experience more enjoyable, and I have empathy, and blah, blah, blah. No shit, that's literally in the job description of a UX designer. No project manager cares about that. Your about section should give me a little peek into who you are. You are not your job, or the job you want for that matter. In many parts of the world, we spend more time around the people we work with than we do with our own families. When project managers are hiring people, they don't just want to know that you have the skills to do the job. They want to know that you're not an asshole. Tell them about you. So for example, hello everyone. My name is Cameron Renneker. I am a design industry leader, photographer, and educator with more than 10 years of experience directing high-performing creative teams to generate strategic marketing solutions, internationally recognized packaging, and product designs, effective user experiences, editorial print layouts, and award-winning creative deliverables for over 24 multi-million-dollar brands. I'm also a husband to a civil engineer named Josh, and a dog dad to the cutest and smartest Whippet Australian Shepherd puppy you'll ever meet, named Sahara. Together, we travel to some of the most remote areas of the world, which I usually find to be the most beautiful, hiking, camping, and road tripping. I love landscape photography. I've taken more than 1 million photos over the past 10 years, and I sell them on a website I made myself where I print, frame, and ship them to people all over the world who have a knack for adventure. In the summer of 2024, we spent 3 months on an epic road trip called the Great Western Loop, which starts by our home in Arizona, heads north through Utah, Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana, then comes back down through Canada, Washington, Oregon, California, and Nevada. I have to update these numbers, 17 states in the US on my way to all 50, and 3 countries, and 32 national parks and monuments on my way to all 56, 63 national parks, I think it is. Cool. It didn't take much, but what I did there was I opened up a bit. I took time to talk about myself, both professionally and personally. Remember, you are not your job. But 2/3 was about me. Only 1/3 of what I said was about my job. 2/3 was about me. And I've given you some photos to imagine me by. My family, my hobbies, my lifestyle, and travel. And you might be asking, well, why would anyone care? As a hiring manager or a project manager, this gives a peek into your life and the things you're passionate about. I ask students all the time, what's your passion? And everyone's always like, I love design, or I love photography. And it's like, no, you're not. You can give 2 shits about design or photography, whatever it is that you're passionate about. Find what you're passionate about. I'm passionate about national parks. Passionate about conservation. I'm passionate about nature. Passionate about getting away from the screen, doing something that means something. What are you passionate about? Start thinking about it now. It gives some background that paints a picture for what might have led you to seek a role in the visual media industry. But more importantly, this gives hiring managers and recruiters something to latch onto. If that hiring manager, that project manager, is also interested in travel or the outdoors, or maybe just has a dog, they may be more inclined to give me an interview where the conversation can then shift to being more about the work. But it also gives the hiring manager a lens through which to look at me and the diverse background I could bring to the project. And lastly, finding time for project team members to get to know each other and build rapport helps those team members to grow trust and break down barriers and open communication lanes that otherwise would have been closed. Finding time for team building exercises and celebrating victories, no matter how big or small, can really go a long way. Same thing goes for sharing knowledge. Allow the team to work together, share knowledge in their own time. Don't micromanage that. Before any project work formally begins, sort of shifting gears here, it's important to hold what's called a kickoff meeting to really get everyone on the same page. This is going to be something that's going to sort of come back to you in Module 5, so pay really close attention to this one. This is a crucial first step that sets the tone for the work that follows. It's typically the main chance to share the project's objectives and overall plan with each and every stakeholder. Asana, which is a popular online project management software, describes a project kickoff meeting as a chance to meet with team members and stakeholders before the project starts to align on key details and get buy-in on critical milestones. Successful kickoff meetings require preparation. These are 8 steps I usually follow in my kickoff meetings, and as usual, we're going to look at each of them in detail. So step 1 is to establish vision and deliverables. And this is just a really fancy way to say that we need to set a common goal for everyone, lay out what needs to be done and when it needs to be done by. Step 2 is to identify team and set roles. In this step, we sort of create a list detailing who's responsible for which tasks. Sometimes we'll even include contact information, particularly for external stakeholders, just so that there's easy lanes of communication there. Step number 3 is to develop an initial project plan and present your initial project plan, which, if you remember back in lecture 2.1, project plan is mostly scope, timeline, and budget. But understand that details can shift during discussions with your team at the kickoff, and so it's important to know how you want to approach the project, but also to remain flexible for that team input. Step number 4 is to define metrics for success. This is, in my experience, where 90% of projects fail. If you have to specify how a project is going to get done, why not go the extra mile and define what success looks like? You have to specify how will the project be measured, what will make it successful, set expectations and goals early. We generally want this metric to be quantifiable and objective, meaning that it can't be argued and it can be quantified by numbers. Some examples might be a specified % increase in sales over a certain period of time, like we saw an 8% lift in sales since we launched the new logo, or a specified average decrease in the number of clicks required to complete a task flow, such as after we redesigned the product listings page to allow users to add items to their cart without having to click On the product, users were able to complete checkout in 3 clicks on average instead of 5. There are really several ways to measure, and the way you choose to measure a project success is going to vary from project to project, but it's important that the team, and more importantly, the stakeholders, agree on how the project success will be defined. Step number 5 is a little bit of a hard one because it is impossible to identify every risk and bottleneck that the team could possibly encounter. And frankly, if our crystal balls were good enough to do that, we probably wouldn't be here. But we can at least stop and prepare the team for potential roadblocks and do our best to put processes in place that we can use to handle them quickly should any of those risks arise. Step 6 might be the most important. How will everyone communicate? I usually tell students at the beginning of the semester that if you email me, you can expect a response in 7 to 10 business weeks. I don't care for email, and frankly, neither do most of you. So then we have to figure out what other method of communication to use. I use Slack, but some people will have disagreements, and admittedly, some information is more conducive for an email or a written document or a meeting. Heck, maybe your team chooses to communicate through carrier pigeon. But if that's the case, it needs to be part of the project kickoff to help clearly establish how everyone ought to communicate. For example, let's say we all use Slack to communicate here. If someone sends me something really important in an email that my client is upset about something, but I only check my inbox once per week, that client is going to be really upset by the time I read that email. So establishing communication logistics for the team is really important. What is the best way to provide status updates? Establish a consistent process, such as weekly meetings, and determine the technology that is needed to facilitate that type of communication. Step number 7 is choosing work process or project method. Establish which methodologies and frameworks the team will follow to align work styles and experiences, and expectations. And lastly, step 8, there are so many tools on the market today, it can be a little bit difficult to figure out which one works best for the team. Asana, Monday, Trello, Notion, Basecamp, GitHub, Gantt charts, Scrum boards, Kanban boards. The list can really go on here. In practice, the best project management solution will give you everything you need to plan, manage, and deliver projects effectively. It should provide a single central platform where teams can assign tasks, share resources, communicate about work, and track project progress and metrics in real time. The important things to keep in mind when choosing a project management tool are: how do you physically see your project tasks? How do you manage and complete tasks? How are deadlines monitored and enforced? Can colleagues easily provide updates on their own work? Does the solution work with your project methodology and fit into your organization's unique project workflow? And then does the solution provide reporting and analytics that are necessary to monitor the metrics established for the project? The list can go on here as well for days, but I'll spare you and leave it there. Now that the project is underway, it's the project manager's job to keep everyone motivated, on track, and working together. Motivational speaker Brian Tracy really said it best: successful people are simply those with successful habits. In other words, your team's productivity habits are the magic ingredients to your project success. If you have the right team habits in place, your team will complete the project on time and collaborate, hopefully without much friction. Even if your team doesn't have the right work habits now, you can work and help them build new productive behaviors. Just remember that it takes anywhere from about 18 to 254 days to cement a new habit, with the average being about 66 days. That's just over 3 months for those of you doing the math out there. We humans are really resilient to change. I like to sort of humorously say that this is a very well-engineered device, our bodies, and it is capable of withstanding a relatively large amount of torture for a relatively small amount of time. But it can take time for projects to form new habits, and for project teams to form new habits, especially when we are joining a new team or project. So these are just 5 really simple ways project managers can help your teams build new habits. And you can somewhat reverse engineer these to become a good partner to our project managers too. This one should be obvious, hopefully. Lead by example. If you want others to affect a change, you also need to be willing to make that change too. Define the habit you want the team to practice, then do it yourself. Be the role model. Your team will follow your lead and they will see the benefits of this new habit in your daily work. Number 2, get assistance from some of the more enthusiastic team members who can quickly adopt new tools or new behaviors and spread them to the rest of the team. And just in case you've never heard of the term early adopters, this is where that comes from. This is what's called the change adoption curve, sometimes called the diffusion of innovations curve. It was theorized in a book called The Diffusion of Innovations by Ohio State University professor Everett Rogers in 1962. The book is still in print, and it's a good read, so check it out. But really, this bell curve theorized the rate at which an innovation, like new ideas and technologies, spreads through a population or societal system. What's nice about this model is that it identifies different adopter groups, like innovators on the left, early adopters, that's who we're looking at in this example, early majority, late majority, and then the laggards who sort of pick up on the technology at some point across time from the product's inception on the left on going into the future on the right. So again, we're looking for those early adopters here to help get other more curmudgeon-y or potentially those who are less savvy with the implementation to realize the benefits of the implementation and work towards adopting a habit around it. Small wins can motivate the team to keep going even though it may seem difficult at first. Celebrate progress, no matter how small, and encourage team members to keep up the good work. Intellectual reasoning often won't work without some emotional heft behind it. Give your team incentives to practice this new habit. Make it fun. Turn it into a game and be creative when appropriate. We need to be careful here that we are not bridging the gap into what's called forced fun. Having a playful workplace is a somewhat rising trend in employee experience design. But if the fun becomes mandated by management instead of emerging spontaneously from the employees themselves, it can become a little bit icky. A study from 2014 by Ethan Mollick and Nancy Rothbard in the management department at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, found that games, when consented to, increase positive affect at work. But when consent is lacking, that positive affect decreases. The researchers also say legitimation and individual agency are really important sources of consent. So all of that to say, don't force a square peg into a round hole in pursuit of motivation. Motivation should happen naturally and organically and come from a place of empathy and shared experience. And lastly, it's always easier to transition to new habits when you piggyback on older sort of existing behaviors. It makes the new habit feel more familiar and ensures a more natural transition. Identify behavior your team is already doing well and help them take it to the next level. A word of caution. When people are faced with change, their reaction pattern tends to mimic that of grief. Team members will spiral from denial to anger, confusion, depression, and crisis before finally settling into acceptance and finding their confidence. If you're going to build new team habits, the new behavior will take time to develop roots, so reactions will sometimes be varied here. It is important for someone on the team to proceed with some sensitivity and empathy for your team's concerns while still motivating the team to forge better, more productive behavioral patterns. Next, let's take a look at how we can create more collaborative work environments, because up until this point, we've talked about collaborative tools, processes, and workflows, but having a collaborative work environment takes more than that. It's also about striving for common goals despite differences in work styles, personal priorities, or cultural backgrounds. A collaborative work environment should be a safe space where everyone feels supported and able to voice their opinions. As organizations grow and become more dispersed, more workers are collaborating across much greater distances. And as a result, cultural intelligence, or the ability to embrace different mindsets in challenging situations, is becoming a more and more important skill to have. In order to lead or be a member of a multicultural and increasingly multi-regional team, you must be able to bridge cultural differences with sensitivity and sincerity. These are only some of the best practices. Number one is start by learning about each other. Find time to talk about things that are not work or project related. Ask your teammates about their hobbies, holidays, weather, entertainment, and so on. Remember, everyone doesn't have a super cool professor who is going to take the time to give them all the wonderful information I've given you today. So be sure to extend others the kindness you wish someone would have given to you. Just show an interest in them on a personal level and do your best to remember what they share with you. We're all humans here and we appreciate emotional human connection, but be mindful not to force others to share information they're not comfortable sharing. Everyone has a different limit to how open they're willing to be about their personal lives. Some cultures can be more direct, while others prefer to stay in the background until asked for their opinion. Get to know each team member's preferences so you can engage with them as effectively as possible. For example, perhaps you notice someone in a meeting who keeps trying to say something or contribute to the conversation, but before they can say anything, someone else jumps in over top of them. They try to interject multiple times, but don't want to be rude by interrupting. In this situation, it might be completely acceptable for you to interject, pause the meeting, and say to that person, "Hey, I noticed you trying to speak. Do you have any ideas or concerns that you would like to share?" Perfectly acceptable. A good practice for any team is to always recap the main points of any meetings, making sure that responsibilities and next steps are crystal clear for each team member. Besides providing clarity on action items, this also ensures team members feel included and invested. For example, after a meeting, the project manager sends out a note detailing assignments given out in the meetings where Annika would draft a client proposal by Friday and Juan would gather some website analytic data by the end of the day. In contrast to my second example, where someone was trying to speak but couldn't get a word in, what do you do when someone who you know has adequate knowledge and experience but won't speak up? Perhaps in this situation, you approach them privately and let them know that you value their experience and have, from their previous roles in similar issues, they bring something to the table and you would really like to know their thoughts on the situation. Different people have different communication styles. Just because someone doesn't speak up doesn't mean they don't have good ideas. Find ways to get feedback from everyone, even those who may appear more introverted. I'm going to insert sort of an off-slide comment here. And I was actually someone that was neither the second point here or the fourth point here. I was actually someone who would over-comment in meetings. I did that a lot. One thing that was really helpful for me in that situation was a bit of feedback that I got from the worst manager I ever had, but it was really good feedback. If you feel like you go into a meeting and you have too much to say sometimes, think about yourself as having 2 coins in that meeting. And each coin, every time you talk, you spend a coin. And you want that coin to be valuable currency. You want people to leave with that coin and be able to spend it elsewhere. So every time you walk into a room, think about yourself as having 2 coins. And every time you speak, you're spending one of those coins. And once your coins are spent, no more talking. It's a really great way to sort of keep yourself in check. And then lastly, you have my personal favorite method, which is incorporating humor. But make sure to do it only at appropriate times. For example, if you're sending a file to someone for review and you don't check the file before you sent it and they respond back with, "Why is the file blurry?" Maybe you respond with something like, "Oops, I exported the file at 72 dpi instead of 300. Guess we're printing this one for ants," with an attached corrected version. Make sure to do that part. However, if you sent the file to the printer with a signed proof approval form and a check for $10,000, suddenly the joke isn't funny anymore and you just cost your organization $10,000. This doesn't mean that you should joke about everything all the time, but lightening the mood can help people to open up and improve work relationships. Make sure to read the team and read the room on this one. Not everyone responds to humor in the same ways. Common themes for working with different cultures are respect and knowledge. Respect the different cultures and backgrounds on your team. If you don't know something, ask a question to better understand where your team member is coming from. It can be really easy to lose sight of collaboration best practices with deadlines looming overhead, but implementing them throughout the entire project will help optimize team performance. These 3 really quick collaboration techniques sound easy on the surface, but they each go pretty deep, so I just want to take a moment to take a look at these. While meetings can be really a valuable time for collaboration, unnecessarily long meetings can be a huge productivity killer. With the global rise of remote working after COVID-19, organizing event and effective virtual meetings, virtual meetings can be especially difficult. When scheduling a meeting, remember these tips. Lose status update meetings and use a software tool instead. Only invite people who are absolutely necessary. Don't waste other people's time. Create a goal-oriented agenda and stick to it. And then end your meeting by clarifying everyone's next steps. And try to end that meeting on time. That's important too. Amazon has actually taken some of those steps one step further and actually turned them into rules. They have what's called the 2 pizza rule. In summary, it's just saying that you should limit the number of people attending the meeting to a size that can comfortably be fed by 2 large pizzas. For the record, that's about 5 to 9 people. The rationale behind this rule is that large meetings tend to be much less effective. With too many individuals involved, it becomes challenging to maintain the focus in the room and encourage active participation and make decisions somewhat swiftly. By keeping meetings small, you create an environment that fosters encouragement and engagement accountability, and much more efficient decision making. The empty chair rule symbolically puts the customer in the room. Every organization has a customer, whether you go to work in-house at a corporation, get hired at an agency, work freelance, go nonprofit, work in the government sector. Every organization has a customer. And symbolically reserving a seat for your customer reserves the importance of putting the customer at the core of every aspect of the organization. It encourages participants to view discussions and decisions through the lens of the customer, considering their preferences, their pain points, and desired outcomes. This consumer-centric mindset really fosters a culture that prioritizes delivering exceptional experiences and drives customer satisfaction and loyalty. And then presentations often lack depth and fail to provide the necessary context for meaningful discussions. Concise bullet points and flashy slides may be visually appealing, but they rarely convey the nuances and complexities that are required for informed decision making. So the no presentation rule replaces PowerPoints with 6-page memos that serve as comprehensive documents, providing all the necessary context, details, and ideas that participants need to understand for the meeting. And then there's the start with silence rule that ensures all participants are on the same page before the discussion even begins. By devoting time, generally about 20 minutes, to read and absorb the information in the memo, everyone enters the meeting with a shared understanding of the topics that are meant to be discussed. And this rule cultivates focus, alignment, and prevents meetings from being derailed by individuals who are unprepared or unfamiliar with the content. And then brainstorming meetings can help spark collaborative thinking and great new ideas. But when brainstorming goes wrong, it can sometimes discourage team members from contributing, or even worse, make them feel like their opinions aren't valued. So before jumping into a brainstorming session, you can try these techniques to make it a little bit more effective and empowering. Try brainwriting. The team leader in brainwriting shares a topic with the team, and the team members individually write down their ideas. This creates a bit of a safe space for everyone to come up with ideas individually before any discussion begins. You can try figure storming. Think about how a person such as your boss, a famous celebrity, or a CEO might handle the situation. It's kind of like role-playing, but with a creative problem in mind, so that one's kind of fun to do. You could try brain netting. You create a communal folder in your project management platform or in your file drive where your team members, especially remote workers, can jot down ideas and share them with the entire team. You have rapid ideation, which is really common in the design industry. You clarify the ideas and solutions you want your team to brainstorm, set a time, and have your team come up with as many ideas as possible using whiteboards, sticky notes, or plain pen and paper. Sometimes you can even use a fig jam board. You have round robin brainstorming that you can do. You can organize team members in alphabetical order and have each person offer an idea in turn while a facilitator records each idea. And then discussion only starts after everyone's had a chance to share. They don't necessarily need to be in alphabetical order. You just kind of go around the room. There's starbursting. You can challenge the team to come up with as many questions as they can about your topic. Start with the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. And then you have the stepladder technique. Once the topic is shared, everyone leaves the room except 2 team members or 2 members of the team. Then these 2 team members sort of discuss the topic and their ideas. Then 1 new member is added and will contribute their ideas before the original 2 shares theirs. Repeat the process until everyone from the original group is back in the room. And then, lastly, conflicts. Conflicts are inevitable when collaborating on group projects, especially high-stress projects. They're emotional, sometimes dramatic, and often exhausting. But when conflicts get resolved, they lead to stronger relationships within the team, and they give a better understanding of how to collaborate and provide opportunities for growth. So here's just a couple of points to potentially help resolve those conflicts a little bit more quickly. Number one, keep calm. It's always easy to keep your emotions, I should say it's not always easy to keep your emotions out of a conflict, but approaching a conflict rationally will help in the long run. Pay attention to both verbal and nonverbal communication. What you say matters just as much as what you don't say. They say more than half of perceived communication is done nonverbally through body language. Keep your language and tone neutral. The intonation of your voice can be just as important as the words you are speaking. Remaining neutral can help you get your point across without ruffling more feathers. Try to avoid threats and accusations. Accusations and threats typically take situations in opposite directions than you want them to head. Rather than escalating the conflict, take a breath and listen to what the other person has to say. Understanding their side of the story will really help you see things from their perspective. And above all, be generous. Keep in mind that resolving the conflict is more important than for the working relationship and your team's ultimate success than winning the fight. Persuade those in the conflict to let go of grudges and to forgive and forget. Whew, my goodness, that was a very dense lecture. I apologize, but I think all of those points were super critical, and hopefully you learned a few tips, not just about managing teams, but being and becoming an effective team member. You all will certainly get the opportunity to put all of these into practice in class, and I'm sure you will get the opportunity to use them in your future jobs. Congratulations, this is the end of the lectures for Module 2. However, do not forget to go and complete the discussion I mentioned earlier in the lecture in Lab 2.4. And I have wonderful news for you. We're going to start working on our second project. So be sure to check Canvas for those due dates, and I'll see you here in a bit when we get to go into Module 3.